Greetings, gamers! Over the past decade or so, many people have tried to connect the timelines of the MMOs Wizard 101 and Pirate 101. But I'm here to tell you today that after much math and many years of research and playing the game, I have solved the Pirate 101 and Wizard 101 timeline. Yes, I am here to tell you that the Pirate 101 and Wizard 101 timelines actually occur at the exact same time. Let's dive in. First, let's set some ground rules for how we're going to measure out this time. The universe of the spiral doesn't have a day-night cycle or anything like that, so there's no real way to tell definite time. In order to do so roughly, I'll be using a measurement of levels. Essentially, each time your character levels up, a unit of time has passed in our measurement system. I'm aware this isn't perfect with side quests and other ways to grind experience, but it's the best semi-objective way we have of measuring time. And also, the lead writer of the game sort of corroborated this, with linking roughly Pirate level 50 to occurring around Wizard level 40. We'll come back to this later, but just understand there are units of time will be measured as levels. And also, because levels do cap eventually, overshooting should be less likely. I'll be measuring dates in the timeline by the average level you are once you reach the point by only doing main story quests. Our best way to find out how exactly these two timelines match up is by looking at events that directly have cause and effect in each game. Firstly, let's look at the imprisonment of Meowiarty, the main antagonist in Wizard 101 from levels 20 to 30. Our wizard defeats Meowiarty at wizard level 30, which I'll abbreviate as WL30 because I'm lazy. This directly affects the world of Pirate 101, as at the end of Aquila, at Pirate level 70 or PL70, we consult Meowiarty in prison on how to translate the Rosetta Stone. Meowiarty mentions during our little chat that he planned his imprisonment to avoid the impending war between Marleybone and Valencia. This war is triggered by the pirates freeing of Napoleon from prison, which occurs around PL30. What's important to learn from this example is that a wizard level cannot happen before a pirate level happens. Keep this in mind for later. Let's look at one more event in the timeline that should help us narrow the date down. Don't worry, this one won't be as confusing. Let's check out the sickness of the Emperor of Mushu I mentioned earlier. At WL30, we chase Malastare into Mushu, where he casts a spell of sickness on the Emperor and steals the spiral keys. Keep in mind the wizard heals the Emperor at WL40, giving the sickness a time span of 10 levels. In Pirate 101, we arrive in Mushu around PL35, where we find that the Emperor is still sick. Because of the sickness of the Emperor, the warlords of Mushu begin trying to fill the power vacuum, namely General So, one of the main antagonists of Pirates Mushu. Because the Emperor's sickness lasts 10 levels between WL30 and WL40, we know that PL35 must exist within a 10 level gap where the Emperor is still sick. Because of this 10 level gap and accounting for news to travel all the way to Khotan and to give General So enough time to plot a power grab, we can assume the Emperor's sickness starts at PL25 on the low end and ends at PL45 on the high end. So, the Emperor's sickness in Pirate happens somewhere between PL25 and 45, whereas in Wiz it definitely happens from WL30 to a WL40. But, because from the example about Meowiarty earlier, we know that wizard levels can't take place before a pirate level occurs, and thus we know that the Emperor's sickness must take place between PL30 and 45. Because if the Emperor's sickness were to happen at PL25, it would happen before WL30, and as previously established, a pirate level can't happen before the equivalent wizard level happens, so this is impossible. And based on the fact that it wouldn't make sense for the Emperor to get sick at PL35s, as that wouldn't give General So enough time to mobilize his forces like we see in Pirate 101, the Emperor's sickness must occur somewhere around PL30, giving us a date range for the Emperor's sickness of PL30 to PL40, aka the exact range for Wizard 101s. Both games occur at the same time. Now, I see you die-hard pirate lore fans getting your needles ready to poke holes in this theory. Let's take a look at the biggest objections I'm expecting from you guys. 1. What about Xol Amul in early Pirate 101? The player meets Aztecan refugees fleeing the arrival of the Shadow Queen in Azteca, but the pirate meets these refugees around PL5, whereas Morganth doesn't even destroy Azteca until WL90. How can these match? Well, if you take a look at the Aztecan prophecies, the arrival of the Shadow Queen has actually been known for a long time coming. just not that it would be Morganthe specifically. We know Morganthe's conquest began long before our wizard intervened, so it's not unreasonable to say that the Aztecosaurs in Xol Amul actually migrated long before the Shadow Queen's attack, fearing the doom of Azteca, which they correctly assumed to be inevitable. The fling from Azteca doesn't have to happen when the Shadow Queens arrive. It can be any time since the prophecies were created, which, to our knowledge, occurred decades or maybe even centuries before either plotline began. So really, this doesn't affect our timeline at all. The final and most pungent objection I can think of is the whole issue with Polaris. Polaris is considered the biggest challenge to any timeline theory for how to fit Wizard 101 and Pirate 101 together. If you're not familiar, in the events of PL-35, Napoleon, a parody of the real-life Napoleon, is freed from Fort Elena, and we later find out around PL-70 that because of us freeing Napoleon, he was able to seize back his throne in Polaris and overthrow the Walrus Tsars, restoring his empire. But in Wizard 101 at WL100, we visit Polaris and see that it's ruled by the Walrus Tsars? And around WL105, we help lead a revolution to overthrow the Walrus Tsars and install a democracy, known in the game's lore as the Penguin Revolution. So it seems like Napoleon never even overthrew the Walrus Tsars? Some players have assumed that the revolution we lead in Wizard 101 is actually what allows Napoleon to gain power in Pirate 101, a theory which would contradict my timeline. However, I think it's important to notice the discrepancies between the two revolutions. In Wizard 101's Penguin Revolution, Napoleon is obviously not involved, but in Pirate 101 it's claimed that it was Napoleon who successfully retook Polaris. Let's take a look at the actual history this is based on to see if we can explain the contradiction here. The real-life French Revolution ended in an oversimplified fashion with the takeover of Napoleon and the execution of Maximilien Robespierre. However, there was actually a short period of time in 1814 after Napoleon took over, where Napoleon lost control of the throne due to public fallout after, unsurprisingly considering Napoleon, a failed invasion of Russia, only for him to come back a year later and retake the throne. While Napoleon was once again deposed shortly after, the idea of such major power shifts occurring in such a small period of time is actually plausible. In the real-life timeline, Napoleon was overthrown, a monarchy was restored, then Napoleon was overthrown again, and a new government was put in its place. You could argue that something similar happens in the timeline of the Spiral. Sometime before the start of the game, Napoleon has control of Polaris, and at some point he's overthrown and the Walrus Tsars take control. In PL-35, Napoleon is freed, on PL-70 he has control of Polaris again as an empire, but then sometime between PL-70 and PL-100, the Walrus Tsars take over yet again, reflecting Napoleon's many rises and falls in actual history. Some event occurs by PL-100 or WL-100 where Napoleon has lost power, only for the Penguin Revolution to occur in PL-105 or WL-105, giving the power back to the people. Really, the only way my Polaris theory could be proven is if our pirate does in fact visit the world one of these days, so if MGI would just give us more updates, that'd be fantastic. It is confusing, but if you want one final nail in the coffin, Blind Mew, the lead writer himself, has said that the timelines run at roughly the same time. This isn't a perfect explanation, but I think it's the best we're going to get with the information we have, especially considering that based on past comments, the lead writer of the game seems to agree with it. If you've made it this far, congratulations. This video wasn't exactly easy to follow. If there's anything, hopefully less complicated, pirate lore you'd like to see me cover in the future, feel free to let me know in the comments below. With all that said, thank you for watching, may your journeys be safe, I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful rest of your day.